Frances, thank you so much for jumping onto this call. We're talking about, just quickly, sort of how we met. We met at through a mentoring program, True Athlete Project. So kind of shout out to them for first off. But I remember the last time we were actually together, we were doing an emotional intelligence training, weren't we? We were doing that day of emotional intelligence training, which was great fun. But how have things been? Like, we were talking about you through the pandemic, and that you've actually had not too bad a time through the pandemic.
Yeah, it's true. I sometimes feel really bad saying it, but yeah, I did. I was lucky. My mum lives in Oxford with a really nice garden, and I took the decision to go there at the beginning of the first lockdown back in March last year. And you know what? I feel really fortunate that I've had that period of time to spend with her. And although it was originally on the pretense that I was going to keep her company, it was really good for me as well. So
Yeah.
I was able to carry on working from home, which I do anyway. And yeah, it's been so tough for so many people, and I feel like one of the lucky ones.
I feel that's been like a little bit of a theme with the pandemic. Some people have either found that space where they have really struggled, and I think it tends to depend on the personality of the individual as well. And also there's people that have come out of it that have learnt loads, like they've done really well out of it. It's succeeded. It's such a tough thing to know. I think it's almost down to the personality of the individual, that's whether this whole world that we're living in suits your personality or it doesn't. It's just doesn't select.
I think the ability to adapt to change, like how you see change, and whether that's something that you're like, okay, I need to adapt to this, or please don't change, like what your instinctive response to it is. And then of course there's loads of stuff that's outside of all of our controls, isn't it? Like what happens with your job and whether that's been stable or not. So yeah, it's been immense extremes for people. So
yeah, it's real tough. Let's go straight into your career, like a career that spanned 20 years in Olympic sport. That is the first British woman to do that, and
in rowing,
yeah.
In rowing to go to 5 games,
Yeah, which is, again, just insane when we think about it. And we'll get onto the commitment and what it takes to go through that. But for you, where did it start? Like, I know I've never heard you talk about this, and but where did it really start for you? Where was the initial love of rowing, and who introduced you to it, and how did it come about?
Right, yeah. So I really wasn't a sporty child. Like, if I did long jump, there were many times I did not make the sand pits. I still landed on that bit of tarmac. And swimming, I mean, I tried, but it was not sinking. That's about as much as I can say about it. But my elder sister was really sporty. I don't know where it came from, because no one in my family is sporty. And every time I turned up to PE, people would say, "Oh, this is so exciting because you're even taller than her. You're going to be even better than her." All these different sports, and I was absolutely useless. And I just got so fed up with being a disappointment that I thought, I'm going to try the only thing she hasn't taken her hand to, and that was rowing. I was really fortunate that there was a river at the bottom of near my school, and so that's where I tried rowing for the first time, and I really loved it. It was for me, I am an introvert, and it was a place where I could go out and be in my own world on the water, like push off from shore, be lost in my own thoughts. And then actually, because then I was really enjoying it, I then had something to chat to people about who also enjoyed it in their own little world. And so sport sort of became this vehicle for conversation and social interaction, which I didn't really have before. And gradually I then started rowing in teams rather than on my own, and I just got a lot of energy from it. That's what I really, really loved about it.
So that's interesting that you started on your own. So did you and like almost said, it was like your space. Sounds like a very mindful thing to do, to get out and just have your time away and go and practice or just enjoy it for the sake of it. Was there a tipping point for you where it went from that enjoyment to, okay, now I can compete in this?
Yeah, so I was really enjoying it, and I was like putting my hand to it. And I think because I've been brought up in a very sort of disciplined environment, my dad was a teacher, and it was all about structure, and you sort of do the plan each day. and I could see that I was getting better. And then I watched the Atlanta Olympics. So I would have been 16 at the time. Like I watched 1992 and I thought it was just such an amazing spectacle, loved it. But 1996, that was when I had started rowing. I sort of knew some of the people that were involved. I identified with them. And one of the people that was at the Atlanta Games came back and gave a talk at my rowing club. And I just thought it would be amazing to do what he had done. And that's when I actually took a piece of card and I wrote on the back of it, I vow to do everything I possibly can to get to Sydney 2000. And I signed it, and then I made someone else come over from nearby and said, oh, will you kind of witness it and sign it as well? And
Wow.
so I made this like really clear commitment that was what I was going to put my mind to. And I look back now and I think, what about all the other stuff? What about all the distractions? And you have school and all these other things. But I just had this really clear drive in my mind. I'd seen Atlanta. I could relate to the people that were doing it. It looked like the most incredible thing to be a part of. And I knew in my mind that Sydney was going to be special. So it wasn't about I want to become an Olympian one day and I'll gradually get there. I had this sense of urgency because, I don't know, you spent a lot of time yourself in Australia and it's like the sporty place and feels really colourful. And I knew it would be a real celebration. So I thought, put the accelerators on. Like at the time I said, right, I'm still at school and doing my A-levels and then I'll be at university and my work is my priority and I'll fit as much training as I can around it. But this is the goal, to try and get to Sydney.
Wow. Yes. That's that commitment that you've made. Like it's almost like, where's a contract? You wrote a contract. You physically wrote a contract out. I think that's so important for athletes, especially at a young age, because I think back to when I started out, I had said there was a moment in my career and part of my journey to becoming a pro was like I was at a dinner table with my parents and I like slammed my fists on the table and was like, that's it, I'm going to be a professional cricketer. And that was my, again, verbal contract to them. And I think it's super important to do that. I think if you're going to try and go at something, you need to have witnesses. You have to have someone there, one for the accountability, but again, kind of like your ego and your pride sits on it then. And it's like, I've said that I want to do this. And this is something that you've heard me say, and more to yourself than anything. Like you can think about it, but once you verbalize it, it becomes real. If you don't verbalize it, if you don't make a physical statement, it doesn't become real. So making it real and making it, whether like you do what you did, writing it down or saying to someone, it has to become real from then.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, and I can look back now and I can see times, all training, but rowing training is really hard. It's, 3 sessions a day, 6 days a week. You get one Sunday off a month. It's full on. And I remember times when I was so tired, I could barely, hold my knife and fork, and my hands were blistered and everything. But this vow, when 99% of me thought I can't do this anymore, this niggle of this really clearly articulated vow that I'd made to myself, that was the 1% that kept putting the keys in the ignition.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just couldn't, no matter how much was pulling me in the other direction, I wouldn't break that last 1%. I just kept putting the keys in the ignition.
Yeah. When you started off, you said, like, again, you were rowing on your own and then you joined a team. Was there ever a moment where you thought, right, I want to be on my own, or teams, or you got selected into teams, you were identified as better in teams? What was that sort of journey and process?
I spent a lot of my career wanting to be on my own.
Yeah.
It was only after a while that I realized, you do get quite a lot out of being with other people, and the performance is way more enjoyable. And as much as your ego wants to get all the credit and be the only one in it, actually, do you really enjoy it? Because you on the everyday, when you look at the everyday of it, what you're actually showing is quite a lot of stress about this. You're putting so much pressure on yourself. And so the teams, I mean, it's inevitable in rowing. There's sort of one slot for one person, and then there's crews of 2 and 4 and 8. And early on, when I was put in teams, it seemed to work. I am a bit of a taskmaster, and it took me a while over the sort of 20 years to work out it's a lot better to work with people and to enjoy the process of creating something together rather than saying, this is how it should be done. Come on, everyone, But when I look back now, that is definitely what I value the most, is the experiences, the stories, even the terrible races, but being able to laugh about it.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on how tiring the training is. Just run us through what a training week might look. And I understand, especially with your career, it would have changed over time with sports science and whether it's nutrition and training methods. And I'm sure that evolved. But what would a sort of program and routine look like for you and the team? Because I think that is important as well. Like even sharing that training, just if you get to a competition, I've only played a team sport, and that for me is when you've put all that training in, you can lean on people, especially when you don't feel like it, and you don't feel up for the event through whatever may be happening. But that training is a big part of your bonding and commitment. So what was your routine looking like?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, sharing those training days, going through that together is a huge part of the togetherness of the team for us anyway, because we saw each other exhausted, kind of lying down in the shower, just, so exhausted, I'd rather just sit down than stand up. And going through those experiences together, that is when, if you're in the middle of the race, and I always say the ultimate team is when you can't put another stroke for yourself, but you can for those around you. So if you're in the middle of the race, your legs are screaming, really, hands up, I would walk away from this right now, but I wouldn't walk away from my teammates right now. I will put another one in for them, because you know what you've all been through. And what it was typically, and amazingly, you say it probably changed over time. It really didn't change that much. Rowing is still fairly archaic. It's a whole load of miles and a whole load of technique to get right, and then a bit of sharpening up when you approach a race. How you fit that jigsaw together does change from coach to coach, but essentially there are some big ticket items that just have to be done. And so typically it would be 3 sessions on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And that would be one really long endurance session. So say an hour and 45 to 2 hours out on the water at a kind of pace where you're challenged, but you're not out of breath. So that's like a steady state session.
Yep.
Your second session would be a lot harder. So you'd have efforts of, say, repeated efforts of 8 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour, as hard as you possibly can. And then your third session would be lifting weights. And then on the Wednesday and Saturday, there would be 2 sessions, and that hard session would be even harder. And then we'd have 1 Sunday off a month. And as I say, it hasn't really changed in the essence that rowing needs loads of volume. You need to fit in as many technical sessions as you can, or work on your technique whilst doing all this physical training whilst you can. And essentially, I mean, I know everyone's got different views on nutrition, but the way I saw it by the time I got to the end of my career is just keep it really, really simple. Keep it, real food, and recovery and sleep to get through it. Just repair, make it as easy for your body as possible.
And what part of the body was pretty much taking the punishing the most? I mean, I'd heard of backs really do get a lot of work in. When I had my own back issues, I got to go see a specialist that I think was linked with Team GB's rowing squad, and they were like, yeah, discs in backs, that's sort of what just gets ruined. Is that about fair?
Yeah, that's about fair. Backs, because it's just the compression, and we do have much stronger cores now. That's probably the one big shift that's happened over the last 20 years, is identifying that the core really needs to be strong to support the back. Other than that, a few broken ribs, fractured ribs, that kind of thing, where you haven't kind of got the scaffolding in place to take the strain if you haven't quite got the right technique. Were
you implementing sort of many recovery types of there's so many different recovery tools out there right now? Was there anything that you found worked really well for you? Because if you're having to do all of that volume, recovery is going to be a huge part of that, and getting up to go again and put in a good technical session without losing your technique, I imagine. And was there something that you found was a good a good sort of routine or technique method you had?
Yeah, sleep.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's nothing beats that.
yeah, I mean, number one, I would write down every morning how much sleep I'd had in the previous 24 hours. And the
Yeah.
one thing I came to absolutely insist on was that I had this, like, a chunk of time in the middle of the day where I could go to sleep. So would that be half an hour? That was brilliant, and I would travel home to get this half an hour where I could just shut down. And you ask, like, what part of your body takes the biggest beating? Physically, yes, it's the back, but really it's the brain. Mentally, because we're constantly under pressure. So we've got that stress that we're carrying all the time, and we're constantly in a competitive environment, but also trying to constantly improve technically. So the cognitive load is huge, and I always functioned so much better when I could have this pause point in the middle of the day, sort of download, reset, and go again, and then really try and get a good 9 hours sleep at night. And what I found was that if I wrote down every day how much I'd got, and I knew I needed like 9.5, preferably 10 hours in a 24-hour cycle. Again, as you talked about with that vow that I made about going to Sydney, if you write it down, you hold yourself accountable to it. So for me, just sleep was the number one thing.
And you talk about the environment, the pressured environment you're in. I mean, I read Redgrave's book, and he spoke about, I can't remember the name of the coach, a very famous rowing coach,
Jürgen Grobler.
That's it, Jürgen Grobler. And he was talking about the intensity at which that training session. Were you ever associated with him in training, or?
So Jürgen coached the men.
Right.
He was a presence. He was always around. And you always, if he was standing behind you on the rowing machine, you thought, better put it out today. But I really wish I'd had the opportunity to be coached by him, but unfortunately not.
Yeah. So your environment and that pressurized, was there a lot of people sort of nipping at your heels when you were at the top? And I mean, how many rowers are in a squad, sort of thing? With obviously there's up to 8 in a boat. So
yeah, up to 8 in a boat, but from when you come back from the Olympics or the World Championships, and the training season starts in September, October, until April the following year, you train in singles on your own. Wow. And you'll be going around this lake. The national training base is in Caversham near Reading. And you're not supposed to be racing, but we're all competitive people. So even in that steady session every morning, you're really conscious if someone's moving faster than you. And you're out there. And, in that second session I talked about, where we do these efforts, a ranking sheet comes out, every day, and there's a list, and you can see where you are on this list. And alongside your name, not only are you ranked, but your time is compared not only to world record pace, but we have this target time for every boat class, which is beyond world record pace.
Right.
So, I mean, even like, say, for example, on training camp, you get up in the morning, your pee is tested to see if you're hydrated enough.
Yep.
Your blood is tested to see how recovered you are and how much of your own body you're breaking down in its effort to recover. You go out on the water, you're competing against each other, and then you get the sheet at lunchtime to tell you where you are compared to beyond world record pace.
Yeah.
So pretty intense.
What was it like as you sort of going through your career, and then you probably go from junior to senior member of that squad? Was there a moment where you're looking at it going, oh, is the young guns are trying to gun it out, and the wisdom of what I know now is no, I can hold back a little bit? Was there any of that going on?
I think I was always really conscious when the new guys came in. Like, number one, I really loved it because they had these fresh eyes. They weren't kind of jaded and exhausted like I was. And if we ever had a sub come into a crew, someone was injured, I was always so keen to hear their point of view, because I really think the fresh eyes are so valuable if you're in a repetitive environment. And then when the new guys were coming up, it always was a bit galling that the young ones, you can't help but improve, because you're growing, you're physically new to this level of training, and you can see, they're getting personal bests all the time. And some of us who've been around for a while, it's like, my last personal best was about 5 years ago. But you've just got to adapt the way that you see it, and think, I'm at a level now where I'm not actually seeking that type of improvement. I'm at a good enough level physically, other than power and other than technique. Even at that point, what can I contribute around the edges? And that's where the little bits come from, and that's where you can see your own value.
And I'm sure the squad obviously would have rotated quite a bit. So how did you adapt to having those new members in? And again, this was something I learned from reading Redgrave's book about understanding that there's certain types of personalities, and you always think of rowing so physical, it is so physical. So there has to be an element of the makeup of you as a human being. You're fairly tall, so there's everyone's either got that leverage. But then the way Redgrave explained it, the difference between like Cracknell, Pinson himself, and like one's heart, one's a pure engine, one's just going to literally kill himself until he's falling off the boat. How do you manage those personalities, and did you have similar types, and were you almost like the one that's shepherding them? And what was that like, really?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And actually, I write about this a lot in my book, this challenge of all these different personalities. Originally, or early on in my career, I thought, right, I've been successful in inverted commas, I've won world championships, so therefore I'm going to tell everyone else this is how we did it, and we should all be carbon copies of what I see a champion does. This is how we behave, this is how we row, this is how we train, these are the targets we need to meet, this is what we need to do. And after a while, I realized that I was very frustrated. Everyone else was having pretty much a terrible time, because if you set really high standards for everyone around you, and you're effectively dragging them along or pushing them up from behind, it's really stifling. It's not enjoyable, and you're not giving them the opportunity to show what they can do as a completely different version of a human and an athlete. And so after a while, I thankfully clocked this and I saw it really differently. So in my head, I went from carbon copy to what can we create together as this mix of really different individuals? And it's amazing and wonderful that we're different, because that will mean that we have like a jigsaw that we can fit together, a jigsaw of strengths, and we won't have blind spots. And the more that we can talk about ourselves and our preferences and our strengths and our fears, if there is anything that we haven't got covered, then at least we're talking about it, and we can make sure that we do take steps to cover any weaknesses. But certainly in that last boat in Rio, that was what made it absolutely like shine, and it was an amazing performance and wonderful to be a part of, because we were a mix of different individuals and we all gave each other space to be the strongest expression of themselves.
Did you find that the cultures sort of from when you started to when you finished had adapted and changed? Were the coaching staff encouraging that? I mean, in a previous podcast that I've had was with John Lewis, the elite bowling coach for England, and he was talking about how open and vulnerable the senior players were, and how that gave the space for the young players to talk about their own insecurities, their worries. Also make it seem like you've got James Anderson and Stuart Broad talking about their vulnerabilities, their worries, and it makes them human. And that's a huge thing to have. But also I recognize that in my sport 20 years ago, that would never have happened. Like, people would be like, I'm fine, and just get on with it. Was that similar in rowing?
Yeah, absolutely. So early on, it was all about, as you say, I'm really strong, and you try, even though we might end up as teammates, I wouldn't have shown you any weakness. I probably would have had the view that I wanted you to feel when you rode with me that you were with someone really strong, not necessarily that I just didn't want to admit that I was struggling. Like, in a sense, you train yourself so that in the middle of the race, your thoughts are, I am strong, rather than this is the last place I want to be and I want to run away. So it's understandable why we were in that place. But now, as you say, things absolutely have changed in rowing as well. And I think what also helped in my last team in Rio was that we weren't sort of the lead boat. We were sort of the second ranked team. And so by default, our egos had to be slightly put to one side as well. And I always found that when I was in a crew with someone, initially people would not want to sort of share openly about as you say, their vulnerabilities or what they found worked, or because they'd always say, well, I'm not sure if we'll be in a team together next year, it might all change. But what I found was, actually, if you share something with me, it doesn't make you weaker, it makes us stronger. And so the teams, and actually, if you tell me something that that you've got a vulnerability, I'm not going to go and use it against you the following year because I don't fully understand it, and you would have evolved and it won't be the same as it was last year. So I think we got over this fear of openness, and instead of it being something that detracts from strength and performance, to something that actually, these are layers of stitching that bring us together. And I see it like a zip. So if we're all alongside each other, if I've got something that I'm struggling with, someone can come in and fill that with their strength, and layer by layer by layer, we become stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, that's such a great point again for the younger athletes probably coming in to see that. But I also feel some people may feel that there's an element of saying it's softness, I don't know, and that can be, I think there has to be that beautiful blend of accountability and non-negotiables, and then that space and that time to open up. And that's why sport, in my eyes, is such a great learner for life and in general, is that you can be hardened and battle tough, but then you do have to have that recovery, that openness to allow that growth to happen from the almost sprint of effort that you're giving, that allows you to grow. Otherwise, you're just going to be, there'll be a time when you'll crack, and that can manifest in itself in any different ways. And there's stories of athletes that kind of crack later on in life, and they fall back. But I'm hopeful that athletes nowadays are kind of understanding that, and it's important that in that spectrum you don't shift too far one way, but also you don't shift too far the other and go too soft and then forget that there's that accountability and that work and that effort. Is there almost something that you find with a rowing that there is non-negotiable, like you need to be this type of person or have this in order to achieve success in it?
Well, I've seen so many different personalities and rowed with such different people, so I don't think anything that you have or don't have is a definitive barrier. But the common factors that I've seen across the people that I've seen really maximize their potential and seize the opportunity that they have as a period of time in their life to do sport, I think that the perseverance, just each and every day, just like failure on repeat, and to keep getting themselves up and back again. And for me, there wasn't a correlation between talent and success. Of course, talented people have this, they have a platform and they have an opportunity, but it's all the other stuff that people do as habits that chip, get them to where they want to get to. And, having an instinctive response under pressure of that didn't go right, but I'm going to move from judging myself for not getting it right to what am I going to do about it? I think that was the difference in the athletes that actually got there or made the most of what they had. And I see it now as like those ones, they moved quickest from judgment to action. The ones that sort of doubted, weren't quite sure, no matter how talented they were, they would stay in that space that was like, oh, I got it wrong, or why am I getting it wrong, or such and such wasn't right, or I don't understand, or I don't know if I believe in myself. That little bit took a really long time to haul themselves out of. Whereas the ones that got it, or the ones that the common denominator in those successful ones, I mean, that was like a 5-minute conversation with self.
Yeah.
Didn't go right. Okay, this, and this didn't go right. Total honesty. What am I going to do? Action.
Yeah. That seems a very common theme with a lot of people I've spoken to, that they say that failure, not an option. Like, that has to happen. Like, if you're running away from that, you're missing a huge opportunity, and that speed at which you get over it, that or learn from it and then move on. The more you dwell on it, the more it's just going to pull you down. obviously your career spanning over the 5 Olympic Games, was there a moment of self-doubt? Was there a moment where you felt, okay, I feel like I've done enough now? Or what was the thing that just kept you motivated to keep going?
So self-doubt every day.
Yeah.
But I did have this thing. So I fundamentally believed in myself, and I believed it was possible that I could achieve what I dreamed of achieving.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it would happen, but I believed it could happen. I think that's a really important difference. So whenever I thought I really can't carry on, there was also this thing in the back of my mind that said, but I still believe you could do it. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I still believe you could. And in 2014, actually, when I'd come back from sort of Beijing, where we didn't win, and there was a lot of expectation on us to win, so I pieced myself back together, went to London. It wasn't a great games for me, and I knew going into it wasn't going to be a great games, and I was still trying to push. I was frustrated that I hadn't won yet. But back when I returned from Sydney, although my original plan was only to go to one Olympics and just to leave it there and go off and get a proper job, I'd actually made this second vow to myself in September 2000, where I said, I want to be the first British woman to go to 5 Olympic Games in rowing.
Wow.
And so again, this was this thing that just kept getting me up and kept getting me going. And 2014, I really was burnt out. I can see now it was the physical manifestations of emotional stress. My back went, I had a broken rib. We had no idea how I'd broken it. I was absolutely exhausted. I remember walking down the road and I would look ahead and see that like there wasn't many obstacles and clock where the lampposts were and just close my eyes and just think, I'll just keep on walking. And that's like another moment of rest. So I was gone.
Wow.
And I just thought there is no way I can carry on in the mindset that I was in of push, wanting to win. And I said, right, I've got to change the way I think about this. And that's when I changed my goal from winning gold to I want to stand on the podium with my arms around my teammates. And what I'm ultimately aiming for is a feeling of joy, not relief that it's over. And sorry, I've forgotten your original question, but I've been explaining how things sort of changed.
Yeah, well, I think that's. Did you achieve that? Did you feel that?
Yeah, so changing my mindset like this, it was amazing because it was like this hose pipe of stress. I was carrying so much tension. I was basically all this time up until 2014 trying to fulfill other people's expectation of what I should be able to achieve. And it wasn't until I let go of that and I said, I do this for my own reasons. And you know what, although I believe I could win, I don't have to win. Like, it's okay if I don't. Still want to, I still believe I can, but it is okay if I don't. The world will not stop spinning. It's okay. And so when I sort of changed how I defined it, and again, I wrote it down to stand on the Olympic podium with my arms around my teammates and feel joy, not relief. I realized that for that moment to be genuine and to stand there and to look each other in the eye and to know my teammates and to be able to say, we did this together, we do this for different reasons, or we're different people or whatever, but we totally did this together and it's something that we created and we're really proud of it. That to have that feeling, I needed to really understand them and to be with them and to be really engaged every single day. It wasn't a case of just deciding to get on board and then, jumping for joy when we all did it on the last day. We had to really understand and know each other and be there for each other. And so I really changed the way I approached every day. Instead of every day being like, guys, we've got to get this speed, to looking and understanding each other so that I could hopefully maybe guide. I'd say now that I changed from being a dictator to an energy director.
Right.
And I feel like I kind of took myself out of the equation and I said, if this is possible, it's not all about me, it's about us, and it's about what can we create, and then going to my final games and just offering that. It's not really competing against anyone else. We're just going to go and we're going to offer that. And it was so unifying. And as a team, we really, really enjoyed the experience. And, we came out and we did stand on the podium, and it was a moment of absolute joy. And I'm so glad that I did change my mindset deliberately like that, because there was a moment in the final where we were coming last, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is all my fault because I've come away from this winning mentality. And then 2 minutes later, we're just we were actually coming back on the Olympic champions. We're rowing down as a chance we could go through and actually win the Olympics. We didn't, we won a silver medal. But I remember in that moment thinking, this changing my mindset has made me faster than I ever thought would be possible, because there is no way we would be holding together under pressure like this if we weren't unified and really trusting each other and really proud of what we've created as a team. And it's what brought us through. So it was more enjoyable, this change of mindset, and it was faster.
That is a fascinating little moment you're talking about there, because that whole focus and vision on a goal of an extrinsic medal, literally, and that extrinsic goal that you're focusing on, but everything you're talking about is going intrinsic, and you're thinking about an identity of who I want to be. I think that's really valuable. I think that's so valuable for people, because almost if you're looking at extrinsic value, you can only really be let down if you don't achieve it. But if you have that intrinsic, whether you came last or whether you got the silver, you have looked at yourself and gone, right, well, I'm valuing myself and my effort through who I am. And that's a really, really big point for anyone.
Yeah, and this is where I really felt like I really wanted to share this story, because I deliberately changed the way I thought, and I did write it down and I actioned it before the event. It's not now I'm looking back and I'm saying, oh, it's okay, I won silver because I really enjoyed it. This is what I did before it all happened, and this is how it panned out. And I think, just as you've really clearly articulated, the difference was I made my goal how I wanted to feel, not the medal I wanted to hold. And I when I'm talking to people, I always say that all of us, everyone that I meet every single day is working really hard. I mean, there's so much going on in our lives. It's hard just to get through each day, I think, without, kind of completely losing the plot. What makes the hard work worth it? And for me, it's how I feel, and realizing that, and actually then articulating and holding myself to it, and making sure that, because I was then going back, I built myself up after this burnout, went back into this competitive environment that I described earlier, and I had to keep, I was determined to hold on to this new mindset. It's not all about winning, and it's about some softer stuff, but very important, and stuff I really, really believe in. But everyone around me and the environment is all about winning. So holding on to that was really challenging, but there are a few things that made me, again, sort of vow to myself that I wouldn't cross back over the line of just win.
Especially when you're in a team as well, where there's probably other agendas. Everyone's got other agendas, and they want to achieve that goal, whether they're verbalizing it or internally verbalizing it to themselves. But to kind of hold true to what you want to do, that's knowing that you can still put in a performance, knowing that you can still be the athlete that you want. I think that's probably a misconception that a lot of people have, that if you change that in that mindset, if I think more intrinsically and internal of who I want to be, and what you're talking about is you're taking pride in the identity that you had, and that even makes me really think about who I was when I was playing, and I think, and I'm not almost ashamed to say it, that I take pride in how I went about what I did. I'm hugely proud of the person I became. I may not have won massive amounts of trophies or played for my country or won a World Cup or whatever it is, but I'm hugely proud of the person that I am and some of the traits that I have through how I went about what I did, because I almost said to myself, this is who I'm going to be. And that story just rings so true. And I think if there's anything that people can take out of that is being able to not worry that the external stuff is almost a byproduct and will come if you kind of trust that process of of being the person that you want to be, so that if you don't achieve it, you're still super proud of who you are. And there's more to life outside of sport now as you start to transition out, and you whether you're an amateur or an Olympian, like there's a moment where you put down your rowing kit, you put down your cricket kit, you put down your golf clubs, whatever it is that you're doing, and you are left with who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think, that is okay to do stuff against the grain or to think differently. It is okay. And if it feels more powerful to yourself, even more so. And listen to ourselves. If it feels right, that is okay. And as I say, for me, it felt like a hose pipe of stress, untwisted, and then the energy just flowed freely. And I didn't get injured again from that moment until after I retired. And so I think that says a lot about the effect of carrying stress or doing things that are not right for ourselves and our souls, how we really function. And so to listen to ourselves.
Yeah. Was there like a book or a person, a documentary that you listened to that maybe triggered this? Or
I think there are loads of different pieces of a jigsaw that, some were immediate, some sort of took time to drop, and different experiences. I mean, I remember at one point I went to go and see Dr. Steve Peters,
yes,
who wrote the Chimp
Paradox,
which I know really works for some people, really doesn't work for other people. For me, it really clarified the way that my brain works. But I walked into the room and I was struggling a bit at the time. And he said to me, "Now, don't talk to me about confidence." And I was like, I really, really would like to walk out this room feeling really confident in myself. And he was like, "No, I won't talk about it. You need to work out where you get your confidence from, because confidence is this feeling that waxes and wanes, and you can feel great for 300 days leading up to a race. And then on the day, you get the squeaky pants and you don't know where it's gone. So you need to work out what makes you feel confident and unpick it." And that's when I looked back over all my performances, and I realized that actually when I reminded myself of my belief in myself, just fundamental bottom line belief and trust in the people around me, trust in the plan that I've put together, that was when I felt calm. Yeah. And then when I felt calm, that was when I could just execute, just myself, bring myself to the day. And I think there were various moments like that. And actually that period of time in 2014 when I was ill and injured, I was able to sort of press pause on everything. And I mean, I was lying on my back, just swapping a bag of frozen peas for a water bottle for about 2 weeks. So I had a lot of time to think, but it gave me that opportunity to reflect and to really unpick things and say, okay, so what does work and what have been my best performances? And I think that was when I slowed stuff down, I then sort of built my own language in my head to actually understand sort of myself and also understand my impact on others, because I could then see, well, not only is this almost poisoning myself, this drive, but also, I feel pretty isolated right now. Like I'm outside of the team and I don't feel like I've got a team around me. Well, why is that? Is that because you've alienated your teammates? Do you really have genuine bonds with your teammates? Do you want genuine bonds with your teammates? Yes. Right. Okay. Well, you need to fix some stuff that's wrong. But I think only having the bandwidth and the actual time to do that, is that possible?
Yeah. And this type period we're in right now, what an interesting period for athletes that are going into Tokyo 2021, and the reflection that must have happened. Like it's quite interesting. I spoke to my brother about his business that he's running, and the pandemic threw many challenges towards him and very real challenges and fears, and he managed to find a way to navigate it and come out pretty well. But one of the things he said was the time to stop and reflect on what was going wrong in the business and what was going well, and where he was winning and losing, and how he's actually managed to change the model. And I think that's just a really nice analogy for probably what athletes have been able to do over this time, you hope. Obviously everyone's going to be individual and dealing with it in different ways. But you hope that there's been a period where there's some time to reflect and figure out, right, if I want to achieve the goals that I'm trying to set for myself, that how am I going about it in the right way? Have I been burning myself out? Do I suddenly feel freer in my mind now? Whatever's going on, what are your predictions for Tokyo 2021, do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I think number one, I just can't imagine how challenging it must have been to be an athlete during this time. So just amazing for the ones that make it. And there will be ones that went through this past year and at this point are not making selection, so that they don't even get the carrot at the end. But one thing I do notice is that for some athletes, competing in an environment when there aren't so many spectators, number one, and number two, it feels a little bit like there's a level playing field because no one really knows what restrictions you've been under in your own country. That is incredibly freeing. Like, speaking as number one, an introvert, and number two, I sort of see myself as quite sensitive. Like, if there's too much going on, I get like really quickly overwhelmed. I like things really simple, really calm, really quiet, the same every day, like really boring. But then I know I can just deliver whatever I've decided to deliver.
Yeah.
And I think we do see this already. You can see some footballers, some athletes in other sport, tennis players, who are producing astounding performances seemingly from nowhere. But remember, if it doesn't suit you to walk into a stadium of thousands of people and to perform in that environment, then this is like an absolutely wonderful opportunity. So I think we'll see some what is perceived as surprising performances, but I think that's just a wonderful opportunity for those that actually would rather there weren't loads of crowds looking at, some people do it for the crowds and that gives them energy, but for some people it's about producing a performance from within themselves, and the opportunity to do that without a whole load of other stuff going on. I'm almost jealous that I didn't get that chance.
Yeah, it's interesting that, like, even watching something like UFC, there's been chat around the fighters that are going into those cages. Some are really succeeding well when they probably wouldn't if there was a crowd, because they're like, right, I can zone in even more. But when there's a crowd, that's the distraction. So again, it's just going to play out. However it will play out and will be an interesting learner. You touched on your book as well, and I'd like to just spend a moment on that. And so, from my understanding, it's the lessons that you've learned from your term without giving it all away. What can people expect from there? What are some areas that you touch on in the book?
Yeah, so it's called Learnings from 5 Olympic Games. So exactly what it is. And I just felt like I had so much value in my head. I needed to get it out because I was carrying it around and I was like, oh, my head, it's just too, like, it's going to explode. And surely this is of value to somebody out there. But, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The main aim, number one, was to get it out of my head, so I stopped carrying it around. And number two, actually just to produce something as a gift to a few coaches, physios, doctors, some friends and family who really helped me get over the line in that last couple of years, and to articulate it and say, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for what you helped me learn. And look what it all came out as. And, amazingly, it has lots of people have said, oh, this is actually really useful. And so I've made it available. But essentially, it's available through my website and we can sort of touch on that later. But the point is that, so in 2014, when I made this new vow, I also said to myself, number one, I don't have to be in the boat, but I want to pass on as many learnings as I can to everyone so that they have the opportunity to have a great experience at the Olympics. And number two, I feel like I've been trying to sort of pass on my learnings in a way that hasn't worked up until now. But how can I accumulate everything that I've learned from at that point 4 previous games, multiple world titles and world records, and pass it on in a constructive way? So it's not a recipe book, it's a notebook of what I learned. And some people that always resonate with some people, but for some people they might think, oh, actually I think differently. But that's brilliant because at least you're starting the conversation. So if you talk to your coach and you say, I don't I don't feel nervous. Well, great. At least you're having a conversation about your nerves and all the way that I've described about how I felt nervous and how I dealt with it. So it was a constant wrangle to balance the sort of human stories and really how I felt emotionally, as well as the kind of practical stuff. But I've sort of knitted them together, so it's not a big tome blow by blow through my life. And I'll just show you. So this is it. It's only like a little thing. So it's like a notebook. People say it's like stumbling across an Olympian's notebook, but it's got loads of graphics and photos just to help. Bring stuff to life. Really simple. It's intense and it requires a bit of rereading because I just tried to like distill everything that I'd learned into something that is like really easily readable. So it's a bit of the emotional, a bit of the pragmatic, lots of stories.
But that's nice. The fact that it's that size that you can come back to. I'm a big believer in having books, and I've started doing this, and I have probably about 5 or 6 books on the go at once anyway. So I'm constantly. I'm not a big believer in starting a book and finishing it straight away. If you've got something that has value, you can either flick through it to get to the value you're seeking within it, and especially if it's something like that looks like you said, a diary. Everyone wants to know what's in someone's diary, sort of thing. So that's really nice that people can go through there. Was there a biggest learner that probably stood out the most, whether it's from the process of writing the book, or throughout your career that you feel has stood out the most?
When you find the right people to work with, it's amazing. So I had everything that I wanted to say in this when I crossed the line in Rio. And I wrote it all down. I had all the chapters, everything was really clear, but it doesn't look like it looks now.
Right.
And I thought I've got to do it all on my own because, I'm a capable person. I should be able to do this on my own. And then I realized, no, because I'm not so I don't have all those skills. And so I found a digital illustrator. I found amazing, wonderful printer down in Lostwithiel in Cornwall. And when I found these people, it has been such a joy to work with them. And it's the same in sport. When I tried to do it all on my own and I thought it was all about me, I got really stressed and frustrated, and it just actually wasn't that rewarding. When I found the right people to work with and I was in these teams of people, awesome.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same thing. When you find the right people and you work together, what you create together, that is the reward.
Look, if there's half the amount of stuff that's come out in this conversation in the book, then people are in for a treat. So, look, where's the best place for people to find you? Just go your hardest in letting people get in touch with you.
Right. Well, so it's super simple because I've self-published and Amazon take loads of money for remember this, if you buy anything on Amazon, it is only available through my website.
Right.
And that is www.franceshoughton.co.uk. And I'm Frances with an E. So www.franceshoughton.co.uk. So the book's available there. I post worldwide. And I occasionally get myself on Instagram and Twitter. Really, if there's an update about the book, and actually there's a second edition coming out, which is the current sort of original gift edition is £25. And I realise that's a barrier for many people. A second edition, we've just this week with my printer and we've just worked out how we can keep the really nice feel of the book, but not on the bespoke paper that I had, really high-end recycled paper I did the original gift on. So it's not on the website yet, but will be, and that will be £12.99, so a lot less. And updates will be Instagram, Twitter, and I'm at Houghton Frances, so HOUGHTON and Frances. But don't hold your breath.
All the links will be in the show notes for this, so people can go there to find it. Look, Frances, this has been amazing. Like, some of the stuff that's come up was incredible. It's been brilliant to catch up with you again. It's been to speak to you, and this conversation blew me away.
Oh yeah, and you, so nice, really nice to talk about it all.
So thank you for coming on.